What is the meaning of heaven? When I was growing up, I was tormented by the idea of hell as being a place that I would go after I die if I wasn't a good person. And I was comforted by the idea that heaven was a place that I would go after I die if I was a good person. And so heaven was an incentive for me to be a good person, and hell was a deterrent for me to be a bad person. And by good person and bad person, I just mean a moral person and an immoral person. And in my video on hell, I explained that the Greek word that is used in the Gospel of Matthew, which has been translated as hell in English, is Gehenna. And Gehenna comes from the Hebrew word Gehinnom, which refers to the Valley of Hinnom. It was an actual place in Israel where people were sacrificed, children were sacrificed to pagan gods, Baal, Molech, and maybe others too. Um, and there was, of course, fire, um, which came to be associated with the concept of hell. And after the period where people were sacrificed to the gods, the Valley of Hinnom, Gehinnom, became known as a place where human excrement was dumped, or a garbage dump. And so it was a place that in the Gospel of Matthew is representative of a life of filth and evil and worshiping of false gods and so on. And I discussed this in my video on hell. I want to just add one thing before turning to the idea of heaven. Um, when I was growing up, hell was Jahannam. This is in the Islamic tradition. And Jahannam, um, very many references to this when I was growing up, and always associated with fire and torture and different stages of Jahannam where people would be burned. And, I remember one time growing up being told that there was one stage that you would be drinking pus from a river. And this is like the second stage or the third stage, I can't remember. But there was just terrible, terrible imagery. One can see how it would really be frightening for a young person, but even for older people. And Jahannam actually derives also from Gehinnom, which is the Valley of Hinnom. So it carries through not only through Jewish um, uh, ideas, but New Testament ideas and then Islamic ideas too. What is heaven? Well, there are many, many parables on the kingdom of heaven in the Gospel of Matthew. Um, and I want to look at a few of them and maybe turn to one parable from, not parable, but one teaching of Jesus from the Gospel of Luke, which is really remarkable. Um, the first reference that I want to look at is in chapter 6 of the Gospel of Matthew, verses 19 to 21. And I've actually discussed this already in my um, reading, my interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus teaches, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not consume and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And in these verses, we see that earth is that where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal. meaning it's the place which will decay in natural time, and a world where what is there can be taken or stolen. And heaven is described as that which is not subject to decay in natural time, and that where that which cannot be taken or stolen from you. So store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not consume and where thieves do not break in and steal. Don't keep what is important to you, what is valuable to you, in a place which will be subject to decay in the time of nature, clock time, and don't keep what is valuable to you in a place which can be stolen from you, but keep what is valuable to you in a place which is not part of the world of things that decay in natural time, and which is not part of the world of things which can be stolen from you. And in my reading of those verses, I explained that what I think Jesus is communicating here is that in your life, don't place the value of your identity in money. Don't place the value of your identity in the things that you have. Don't place the value of your identity or who you are in what you have, because what you have can be taken from you. Or it won't last forever. It won't last for the duration of your life. I have some clothing that I I bought when I was younger, and after a few, they had elastic around the waist, and after a few years, that elastic just corroded, and the whole garment was useless at that point. Um, you buy a knapsack, and the zipper doesn't work anymore, and the whole knapsack then at that point is not usable. Um, at least if you most people would would either leave that knapsack unfixed, or maybe keep it as a secondary thing, if not outright just give it away or throw it away. So um, when we put our lives or the value of our lives in our reputation, in how many people like us on social media, or how much money is in our bank account, or our appearances, um, because who you are right now will not be who you are 20 years from now. The appearance of who you are will not be the appearance of who you are 20 years from now, but who you are will be not you will have the same identity. You'll be able to say I and mean the same thing by it. You'll be able to collect together these 20 years into one consciousness and represent it as part of one life. But we know that when people put their identities in this, they're very vulnerable to having a collapse of their identity, because they put their lives or the value of themselves in things which are inherently unstable, what Jesus calls sand in 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 the Gospel of Matthew. I think it's chapter number 7. But build up your house on rock, so that when the winds come and the storms come and the rains come, your house stands firm because it's built on rock. But don't build your house on sand, so that when the rains come and the winds come and the storms come, your house just falls apart, right? And you are building your house on sand, and I'm building my house on sand, if who I am is dependent on what people think of me, or um, my reputation, or my status, my financial status, or my social status, or my political status, or whatever. Um, so it's interesting here in chapter 6 that heaven, Jesus doesn't say that heaven is a place that you go to after you die. Heaven is not, the key to heaven is not your death. That would have been an idea from Plato, from the Greeks, from the Romans, the sense that the soul separates from the evil of the body, the prison of the body in death, and then it is going to a pure, it's becoming pure, as though human life was impure, and it's a place that one must escape from in order to get to a better world or higher world. That's a very common idea even today, but it's not how I think the idea of heaven is understood in the Gospel of Matthew. We see this in some other very, very interesting and important moments in Matthew. For example, if I go to chapter 13 and look at some parables of the kingdom of heaven in the Gospel of Matthew, I'm turning here to verse number 24 of chapter 13. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. That's very interesting. I'm just reading the opening of the parable, but it's interesting. The kingdom of heaven is comparable to someone who sows the seed in his field. That's active, that's not passive. The kingdom of heaven is not out there waiting to be discovered after death. The kingdom of heaven is something that you bring about, that everyone must bring about, that we participate in bringing about, that we are obligated to bring about. Yes, it is a better world. Yes, it is a higher world, but it's a higher version of the world of human life. It's, you can say, the fulfillment of human life. If you go to verse number 31, he put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. Here, the kingdom of heaven is not someone that sowed the seed, it is the seed. The mustard seed is one of the smallest of seeds. You can hardly see it. But this seed grows into a giant tree, which invites life. And so once again, you get this sense of a blossoming of the potential or the power of what is already contained in the seed. And the seed is humanity. And the kingdom of heaven is the world in which this power of humanity, or the richness of humanity, the diversity of humanity, the creativity of humanity is, it's alive, it's growing. Hard to imagine right now in a world where so-called artificial intelligence is ruling the day, and where it's really hard to find people who are creative and who offer something new, whether it's in music or whether it's on TV or whether it's in YouTube videos. There's just so much garbage. Reminds me of Gehinnom. It reminds me of the excrement and the filth, and the sacrifice of the soul of the human being. But there is still creativity alive, and the human being has the power to bring it about, not only in his own life, but in the social world. Chapter 13 still. Let's look at one more parable, maybe two more parables here, verses 44 and 45. Chapter 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Here in these parables, you have the idea of committing fully to that which has the most value to you. Selling everything that you have to buy this field with the treasure that you know is hidden there, or selling everything that you have to get this pearl that is of the greatest value. So the kingdom of heaven is that which has the greatest value, and that's what the human being should commit himself to. What is the kingdom of heaven? Well, it's the realization of a world in which human beings relate to one another as human beings who have intrinsic value, who have dignity, who have not merely use value or transactional value or instrumental value, but who have intrinsic value. So we know that today people often relate to other people in such a way that they are thinking about what the other person can do for them. How can you benefit me? And if you're of no benefit to me, then I don't have time for you. If you have some use value to me, or if I can use you as an instrument for my own ends, or if there is something that you offer me, then I have time for you. But the fact that you are a mere human being is not a reason for me to spend time with you. And nothing could be further from the teaching of the Gospel of Matthew. There is a beautiful, beautiful passage in the book of Isaiah in the Hebrew scriptures, which I just want to turn to briefly because it's one of the most amazing metaphors of a higher world that I have ever read anywhere. And it comes in chapter 11 of the book of Isaiah, and it starts at verse number 6, and maybe I'll read until verse number 9, end of verse number 9. Here you have the prophet Isaiah speaking about a higher world. He doesn't call it heaven, but he says, "The wolf shall live with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together. And a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together. And the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp. And the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers the sea." This is a highly unnatural world, a world in which the wolf, the predator, and the lamb, the prey, lie down together in the same space at the same time. Of course, Isaiah, speaking on behalf of God, is presenting here a metaphor. This is not the jungle or the savannah. This is the world of human life. The wolf lying with the lamb means that there is no predator and prey. It means that when human beings relate to one another, they relate to one another as part of a common human family. Today, there are so many predators everywhere. I can't live one day without seeing either an email or receiving a phone call or speaking to somebody who is trying to scam me out of something, with some kind of promotional thing that I didn't ask for, or, you know, contacting Amazon because I've been charged with something that I didn't order. I got a call recently from the bank, and the phone actually had the bank's fraud center number. And I answered it, and the person says, we have a report of a transaction. Can you verify that you bought this? I said, no, I didn't. And they started asking for information about my banking information, and I was giving my credit card number because I knew that everything depends on the PIN at the back. I gave my credit card number, I gave the expiration date, but along the way I was asking questions. Why do you need to know this? What specifically was the transaction? Where was it made? And they answered all those questions. It was a flight to Dubai or whatever. But then they asked for the PIN, and that's when, of course, I didn't do it, and I contacted the bank, and they said, no, we don't have that transaction here. So this is a world, heaven is a world, the image of a higher world that Isaiah is presenting here is a world in which there is no preying and there's no predator, where when one human being looks at another human being, he sees himself, and he sees himself seen by the other person. I am in you and you are in me, and we relate to one another as such, regardless of how much money each of us has, or the status each of us has, or the property each of us has. All of those things that were so important in the Greek world, the Roman world. So the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together. It's so instructive, to see a video, these nature videos about lions feeding off prey. Sometimes lions would go into farmland and kill livestock of a farmer with sometimes terrible consequences. The farmer might put poison in the livestock that is killed, which ultimately poisons the entire pride of lions. And then they die. And that poison is so easy to get. You can understand the farmer's perspective in doing that. And at the same time, you can also understand the anger this causes among naturalists and people who understand the importance of preserving the species. But just the blood that's involved, the I don't know, cruelty is not the right word, because there's no cruelty in nature except as a projection of human consciousness. But I mean, to see a lion feeding on a calf in nature right now, and then to see this image, it's just mind-blowing that here you have an image where they're lying down together. Children are playing with deadly snakes. The cow and the bear are grazing together, and they bear young together. They copulate. It's absurd in the world of nature, but as a metaphor, it's so clear what is being communicated. I want to look at maybe two more passages. The next passage that I want to look at about heaven is in chapter 16, verse 19. Chapter 16, verse 19. And this is said more than once, I believe, in the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus teaches in heaven, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. You can see there's a one-to-one correspondence there. There's a parallel there. If you do evil on earth, heaven, the idea of heaven is affected proportionally. And if you do good on earth, the idea of heaven is affected proportionally. It suggests very strongly that heaven is, again, the realization of humanity, a true humanity on earth, in human life. You know, maybe the most remarkable passage comes from the Gospel of Luke, which is the third gospel. And it comes in chapter 17, and it's just two verses, which are just so striking. It comes in chapter 17, verse 20 and 21. Once Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, and he answered, "The kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, 'Look, here it is,' or 'there it is.' For in fact, the kingdom of God is among you." So Jesus is asked when the kingdom of God is coming. And he says it's not coming with things that can be observed. It's not a place that is coming. You can't point to it. It doesn't occupy space and time because it's a relation. It's a world in which human beings think about themselves and one another differently as the image of God and not the image of nature, to recall, a distinction that is so critical in the first three chapters of Genesis, which I discussed in my first video. And so, nor will they say, "Look, here it is," or "there it is." For in fact, the kingdom of God is among you. It's right here. It's not you, it's not me, it's the space in between. When that space is expressed by love or characterized by love, which you can never point to. No matter how many poses a person takes or smiles you see in a person's picture, or you can't say, "Oh, that person's in love," or "that person loves the person," just because the person's smiling. I mean, I know that's very common, but it's such a foolish idea. It's an static image. It's not the reality of spirit. So the kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, "Look, here it is," or "there it is." I can't say "here it is," because if it's here, it's not there. And I can't say, "Oh, there it is," because if it's there, it's not here. The kingdom of God is among you. It's what we read in Isaiah, it's where the knowledge of God covers the world as the waters covers the sea. My name is Mohammed Kimji. Um, please connect with me on LinkedIn if you would like to keep in touch.